is osteoporosis. Get a hold of my book. It's all in your head. Goes into the 25 different diseases you get when you have osteoporosis of the skull. These are all reversible. You take the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack, the MSM, vitamin D3, stay away from all the bad foods, including gluten. And guess what? You'll regrow all your bones, including your skull and your legs and your hips and everything else. Contact us at usaradiohealth.com. That's usaradiohealth.com.
A new study from Massachusetts General Hospital and the National Institutes of Health could offer some new clues about potential causes of long COVID-19 symptoms and possible avenues for treatment. The study said the many symptoms behind long COVID may in part be driven by long-term nerve damage, and this could help in treatment in the future. The Swiss company behind the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline said that they could not confirm reports that it had filed for bankruptcy, but did say it has terminated all employees following the recent geopolitical developments. The company, which built the gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, said its mobile and network lines are unreachable at this time. Major League Baseball has canceled opening day, with Commissioner Rob Manfred announcing the sport will lose regular season games over a labor dispute for the first time in 27 years after lockout talks collapsed in the final hours.
The calendar dictates that we're not going to be able to play the first two series of the regular season, and those games are officially canceled. We're prepared to continue negotiations. The clubs and our owners fully understand just how important it is to our millions of fans that we get the game on the field as soon as possible. To that end, we want a bargain and we want an agreement with the Players Association as quickly as possible.
The players need a minimum of 28 days for spring training, and the regular season was set to begin on March 31st. The players won't be paid for any missed games. For USA Radio News, I'm John Hunt.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Grosvenor.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives here on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. Also on your interwebs at wsmn.live. That's Whiskey Sierra Mike November.live. Also, you can find us on Facebook and many other outlets. Just simply putting a little search engine up there. CSC, the number 4 USA, also Truckers Independent Broadcasting on Facebook. But I'm joined here tonight by John Grosvenor and Chris White up in Central PA. But John, we're going to go to you first here, and you're in Nashua and in the studio holding it down. How are we looking in New Hampshire, sir?
Oh, we're going right to that right away, huh?
Right away. I'm getting out of the way. Getting out of the way.
Well, let's see.
So General Bolduc's looking pretty good. So, all right. I've already done my research.
He was on Fox News recently. He was talking about the Ukrainian thing. He did really well, and was referencing the fact that Joe Biden mishandled things and how he could he could have gotten ahead on the issue if he had handled things differently about 8 months ago and prepared for this. But he waited till the last minute, as always, like you'd expect him to do.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
and Don Bolduc, he did the People's Convoy left out of New Hampshire today, and Don Bolduc did get to meet up with them, and you'll never see Maggie Hassan meeting with common man, working man folks, and supporting them in their fight for freedoms. But there was Don right there, man.
Absolutely.
Shaking hands, meet, greet, and showing support.
There we go.
Isn't it really bad when the elites have the proletariat protesting the revolution?
Right.
The working class is rebelling against the elites. The proletariat is not answering the heat or call of communism. It's frightening.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the State of the Union, if you want to call it that. Of course, Joe Biden says it's strong. I don't know. I know. I feel I'm strong, but I don't think Joe Biden is. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But Colonel, we're going to go to you up in Central PA, and you're going to lead into our guest here, if you don't mind. Colonel, take it away.
Absolutely, gentlemen. It's my pleasure. John and I are just back. Well, John's been back a couple more days longer than I, but we're just back from CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Convention in Orlando. This is the big one, man. Even Voldemort spoke Saturday night. He whose name we dare not mention, Donald John Trump. Shh, don't tell anybody at YouTube. Anyway, just to let you know. So there you go, folks. And while down there, I met a very energetic and exciting young man. And I say young because he's about 16, but he's a little older than that. He has to be to serve in Congress. But ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight is Scotty Moore, who's running for Florida's 9th congressional district. Scotty, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Honored to be here. Appreciate it, fellas, and really grateful for your guys' service and protection and defending our nation. So thank you for that as well.
Our pleasure.
Well, it's very kind of you. We appreciate you paying taxes and the Chinese loaning us money. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got paid salaries. It would have sucked.
Yeah.
But Scotty, we met down there. You and I were standing on the radio row there, and I forget how we got each other's attention, but we just sort of started talking and engaged. It was I had a good time talking to you. I asked if I could interview on my own program, and I suggest you come on Common Sense Conservatives. You're like, yeah, happy to do it. And I just got back yesterday and didn't have a chance to coordinate any visitors. And I gave you a call this afternoon, and you dropped everything to come on the program. We're very grateful for that. So welcome to the program, and we'll get into it here in just a second.
Yeah, fantastic. Listen, it was really great, and we were all on Media Row. And as a candidate, that's part of my job is to grind it out. No one's going to work harder than me to get my message out. And that's part of waking up early, showing up and just waiting and trusting the Lord with the results. And so it was great to interact and connect with you. There's a lot of great people, fantastic people at that convention. And if you look at what's happening in that convention, it's just a segment of really the majority of the United States. And so most people, we're greater than most people think. There's a lot of talking heads out there that are saying different, but the majority of Americans, I think, are really right in line with what we are believing.
Well, Scotty, before we get into your race that you're running for, and we'll describe your district, I've taken a look at the map, and it looks like it's the southern fringe of Orlando and a big chunk of the center of the state there. But before we get to that, what are your impressions here of CPAC, having gone to it? Was it the first time you ever gone, or have you gone previously?
No, I actually tried last year and it had gotten sold out. So this was my first time, although I wasn't running last year. And I had the impression perhaps that I was going to run. This year I'm running. And so it was one of those things where I would jump in and listen to some of the people that I really wanted to try to make sure. But the majority of my time was out trying to connect with people, get on Media Row, and just network. I mean, that's part of my job. That's what you were doing, I think, a lot of the times too. So it was I, of course, listened to Donald J. Trump. It was fantastic. There's a reason why I put Trump Republican on my literature. I really do believe. So first impression was amazing. It was fun. Great people, great speakers, a lot of great leadership in that room. And that's what we need. I think leadership matters. It just really defines nations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'd have to agree. Yeah, the thing is that, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So they say what happens in Orlando hopefully doesn't stay in Orlando. We want that fever pitch to spread around the country, that conservatism. Now, would it be fair to describe you as a constitutional conservative?
100%. In fact, that we're part of the reason why I'm running. Listen, I was 20 years I was working with a Christian nonprofit. I lived in Brazil for a number of years, traveled all around the world. This was not kind of the direction that I was seeking to go. While I was still very politically minded, and I really believe politics matter as far as our engagement, I did not have this foresight of saying this is where I'm going. However, due to what's happening in the undermining of our constitutional republic, there was this overwhelming urge that someone needs to step in and fight this fight. So absolutely, I'm a constitutionalist.
So you're saying I'm sorry. Yeah. So you're saying you're not a lawyer who's hung out in DC the last 20 or 30 years. You've been out doing things in the real world.
Anything but. In fact, yeah, I'm more of a normal guy. In fact, the way I received my salary is we had to fundraise. And so we would go to people and connect. And I've done that for over 20 years, living in Brazil, like I said, traveling. Even travel expenses weren't paid by the organization. And when people didn't give, guess what? The organization didn't supplement. We just didn't get paid. And so it was really much of a by faith. And so this idea of like, I'm just an everyday American, but we need to bring that back to the government, we the people. And really the People's Convoy and other things I think are great examples of our country starting to really wake up and fight back.
Now, Scotty, are you a native Floridian? I was just curious about that.
Yeah, interesting story. No, I'm not. I grew up in Minnesota.
Minnesota, hey, you having that lutefisk, yeah, with the funny fella there.
Right? So we got some connections with the whole northern snow cold. I mean, I grew up there, went to college in the Fargo, North Dakota area because it wasn't cold enough where I was at.
Had to go further.
And I went further, and then I went from there. I graduated and I moved to Brazil, living 4 degrees away from the equator, right on the ocean. So I went from one extreme to the next. So.
Well, it's interesting. I'm sorry, John.
I just got to say, piece of useless trivia for you. Minnesota is the most northern state in the continental U.S.
Yeah. And it feels it. I tell you what.
It feels it.
Yeah.
The Canadians say it's warm down there in Minnesota. Yeah, there you go. But the reason I ask is because Florida is very much a transplant state. Yeah. Many of the residents of Florida come from around the country, particularly the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, and they find their way down there at some point in life. It used to be that was the people a little more advanced in age, but I'm finding more and more youthful people are transplanting down there. Now, I don't usually ask about family, but you're a candidate running for office. Is your wife from Florida, or is she from somewhere else?
No, she's from Brazil. I
had that feeling. That's why I asked.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you did, because that's part of my story. So we have a funny story in how I met her. We met in 1998. It was the first time she had ever been to the United States. She was a student at the time. We were involved as college students in the same organization, Campus Crusade for Christ, with Crew. And so the organization flew her up to Minneapolis. We met in 1998. I didn't think I'd ever see her again. Little did I know that the Lord has kind of funny ways of working things out, and I ended up moving down to her city. But so she spent the first 30 years of her life in Brazil. We've been married for almost 19 years. I'm 42, even though maybe I don't look it. And 15 years ago, we moved here to the States, and I helped her become a naturalized U.S. citizen. So I've been through that process of living overseas, immigrating overseas. I have a permanent visa in Brazil. My family has dual citizenship, but also bringing a Brazilian wife and immigrating here and working through that process legally, by the way.
So, Scotty, the reason I asked that was kind of a Trojan horse question there, because we hear the Republicans hate immigrants, and they're kind of, I don't know, racist and biased and bigoted. And of course, many Portuguese and Latin folks are, of course, Caucasian or white by self-description. But nonetheless, somebody from Brazil, they speak a foreign language down there. I think it's Portuguese. Yeah. So you've not only destroying all of those preconceived notions about conservatives, you married someone from abroad, and you've built a family, and you live here in the States now. Has that ever been a challenge at all, being married to an immigrant?
No, in fact. Maybe it's just because
but America is systemically racist and anti-immigrant. I'm confused. I'm so confused.
I know it. My wife's confused too, because she's looking at what's going on, and she's kind of looking around, and that's a great point, because there's this narrative being told of how you're supposed to feel and act, but yet that's not my experience. For example, I know I'm going to be called a white supremacist or fill in the blank. I mean, look at what happened with Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome, who is a African-American military Marine, retired Marine, but she's the face of white supremacy, along with Larry Elder and others.
Larry Elder, yeah. I think I saw him at a Klan meeting that never happened.
Yeah, right. So, we know it's going to happen. That narrative is going to keep getting pushed, but we know, and I think people are starting to wake up saying, this is ridiculous. This is crazy.
It absolutely is. Well, let's shift a little bit here. We've had a little bit of entertainment and mild moments there, but let's shift to some serious issues. Looking through your website for your campaign, I'm seeing some rock rib solid conservative issues here. I mean, like Second Amendment, you're standing up for. You're also standing up for family, religious freedom, protecting life. I presume you mean the right to life as opposed to pro-choice, school choice, medical freedom. It seems like across the board, you're focused on freedoms and liberties. Am I missing something about your candidacy?
No, because that's the bedrock of who we are as America. You know, if we lose our constitutional freedoms that we have, that are God-given, by the way, that we were built on as this country, and the Constitution upholds, we lose the very foundation of who we are. And by the way, what's shocking, and my wife has an interesting perspective on this, because even though she's an American and she loves the U.S., and she comes from a different perspective. And so she's like, you know what, growing up, I heard so much about America loving their freedoms and everything. And so she was shocked at just the notion of just all of a sudden there's this COVID that comes in, that the Americans are just freely handing over their civil liberties and freedoms. And she's just like, this is crazy. Look what's going on. And so if we lose that, we lose the very essence of who we are as Americans.
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because Victor Davis Hanson's newest book, The Dying Citizen, he talks about the concept of opulence and leisure being the death of liberty, because people become comfortable and they forget the struggles it takes to earn those liberties and protect them from others. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And I'm not surprised that your wife made that remark. Most people that I find that are best schooled in American civil liberties and American system of governance, and are all in on America in the right way, tend to be recent immigrants and naturalized citizens. They are very well attuned, no matter whether they come from Syria, Afghanistan, Cuba, Brazil, Germany, Iceland. It doesn't matter. Almost to the man and woman, I find them be the most or the best informed Americans. And I suspect that's probably been your experience too, Scotty.
It is. And it's actually a great point of how Republicans actually really want immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants, but we want it to be done legally. And that's the caveat. And then when you have a whole bunch of people coming in across the border illegally with the option of maybe being paid $450,000, not only is that crazy, but it perpetuates the very nanny state of just kind of, we'll keep giving you everything. And it's the complete opposite of what you just described of people who come over here legally and understand, who want to build a business and understand, like, listen, I'm coming over here for lower taxes, for freedoms. I lived in Brazil for a number of years. I know that if I pull my cell phone out, that I have a significant risk of probably losing my cell phone. I knew that if I left the house, that I needed to be sure and understanding that I may not come back with everything that I have, because that's just the current reality. So Brazilians want to move here because it's safe, because of these are some of the things that we're going to give up if we keep allowing this downward spiral.
Well, we're going to get Todd here in a second because I know he's itching to ask you a question. But before we get there, by lose, just to make sure everybody's straight with the vernacular, you don't mean that you're likely to lose it because you just set it down somewhere. You're likely to be robbed, and it's what you're talking about in Brazil. Todd, go ahead and jump in there.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I served my last duty station at Fort Shafter, Hawaii, with a gentleman from Brazil. He immigrated here. He had served in, I believe, the Marines in Brazil or the Army, whichever it was. I can't remember. But he was one of those just, red, white, and blue, gung-ho Americans. Major supporter of Donald Trump, and just loved the liberties, loved the fact that he could own guns in this country, and just go out and shoot fireworks off and just celebrate the 4th of July and all those good things. And he understood what it meant to be an American, and he basically said the same things you guys were talking about, like Victor Davis Hanson was talking about. Giving away your freedoms just kind of willy nilly, I guess, because you get comfortable in that first world environment, I guess. And my question is to you is, what really sparked you, and it hasn't to do with what I just said, what sparked you to run for this office? I mean, what really woke you up to say, hey, that's the office I need to seek?
Yeah, it's a great question. So due to certain constraints within the nonprofit organization, we couldn't be very outspoken, but I was involved in different areas locally. And so I've gotten involved in city, different things, and commissioners, like helping out even locally with what's going on, pushing forward, and even state races. And so each of those areas, whether it's a city commissioner or county commissioner or even statewide offices, have different reasons why they're set up the way they're at. And I believe all politics is local in the sense that you're really treating certain areas, but they have different focuses. And I'm a big picture kind of guy. I really believe that at the heart of who I am is big picture thinking. We have different giftings and abilities, but when I consider where we're heading as a nation, and I look at my two daughters, who Isabella's 14, Sophia's 11, and I wonder, what kind of America are they going to inherit when they get just a little bit older? And what about my future grandkids that aren't around yet? And what am I willing to do that perhaps others aren't willing to do to hold back this systemic evil agenda? And so as I considered that, the best option for me wasn't a county commissioner, even though that's important. That's small time stuff, and it's not dealing with the big problem or the statewide. Statewide, I think it's really, again, matters, but it's the bigger picture. And so when I consider, for example, if I'm an ER doctor and I have a critical patient coming in with a gaping wound, gushing blood, and a broken arm, I don't fix the arm first. Why? Because the arm will be set and great, but I'll lose the patient. Right. And so the idea is we've got critical situations happening within our nation, from the southern border to energy independence to the fiscal irresponsibility that's happening. China's at our back door, Russia. You've got inflation out of control. You've got taxes that are just kind of skyrocketing. You got abortion. And I mean, we could just go on and on and on. And if I just focus on certain things in the 9th Congressional District here in Orlando, we could maybe even have it look really great, but we risk losing our country and my girls in their future, and even your kids and future grandkids. And so as I consider this, and I'm a spiritual guy, I was praying and really laying that before the Lord, and just longer story short that I'm willing to share if you want me to go into it, but I just felt like this strong urge to go in, and it really became an act of obedience. Am I going to obey to do this? And it cost me my job with this nonprofit. We couldn't continue on, and we're trying, but anything worth having has a cost, and you got to count the cost, because it's either now or later, but they're coming for us.
No, you're absolutely correct. In states that are, red or blue, they can sit there and tout, like Tennessee, we're a solid red state. We can tout being red all day long, but if we don't solve the problems in Washington D.C., that's not going to matter. That's not going to help us.
Yes, sir. And they're coming for you, by the way. Tennessee, they're coming for you.
Absolutely. And that's why we need true common sense conservatives and constitutional conservatives that are going to stand up in our own state. But how do you view your role in Congress kind of on day one on pushing back against the nonsensical agenda of the left, and at the same time pushing back against some of the nonsense that's going on in our own party and saying, hey, there's some common sense things that we can put together right now and really agree on and get done. How do you bring those two sides together, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so number one, the first thing that I'm going to do, the first vote that I'm going to take is to get a new leader, right? Because we're going to bring in new leadership. We're going to become the majority, and we're going to get Nancy Pelosi out of there, fire her, and really put a speaker that I hope is America first. And one of the things that I think Donald Trump did great, listen, I was on board with Donald Trump early. I wanted Marco Rubio at first, Florida guy, but I really, clearly when it was between Hillary and Trump, I didn't really know, but he became one of my favorite presidents because the amount of stuff that he did in the conservative, he was the most pro-life president. We had peacetime, the Abraham Accords. I mean, it's amazing some of the things we did. And he put America first. I really believe, we talked about leadership briefly. I really believe a good leader cares for their people. Whether you're in the military, you got to take care of your people. You got to look out for them. And putting America first is just common sense. We're in America. Doesn't mean that we don't care about the rest of the world, but we care for our people first. And so one of the things that I think, it's not just me, 1 out of 435, it's getting a coalition of people together. And that's part of this audition or interview process of becoming a candidate for U.S. Congress, is how can you do at motivating and mobilizing and getting people to jump on board with you. And so I look forward to working with the Freedom Caucus and other people like Jim Jordan, others who are speaking that. And I believe all across this nation right now at this moment, there are America First candidates who are being raised up that I believe are challenging the rhinos, that they've already been called out, that we're coming, and there's going to be a whole amazing freshman class that's going to be speaking with one voice towards that direction.
Yeah, I really think there is going to be an amazing new class of young freshmen for the Republican Party, and I have a sense we're not going to be betrayed like we were with the fake Tea Party folks who latched on and rode the red carpet of Tea Party movement, which was across the board. It was also Democrats, not a lot, but there were Democrats too. And these people rode into office and then betrayed the movement. I have a feeling that's not going to happen this time, and I hope that's the case. So, folks, our guest tonight is Scotty Moore, as a candidate for Florida's 9th congressional district, running to hope change things in Washington, D.C. Now, Scotty, you mentioned prayer. And I'm not a person of deep faith, at least not on the surface of people see it, but I was driven to prayer last night as I prayed to stay conscious during Joe Biden's State of the Union address. It was really a challenge. I'm telling you, I actually did a live stream and gave commentary on it, but after 57 minutes, I polled my audience and said, do you want me to continue or should we shut it down? 75% of my viewers said, please, we can't take this ear bleeding any longer. It was, I mean, before I give it a chance, get in there, Scotty. I mean, he talked about, and the well-trained SEALs, the lapdog sycophants in the Democratic Party are standing up, clapping their flippers every time when he said, and we'll rebuild 65,000 miles of U.S. highway. Folks, we have 4.1 million miles of highway in this country. That's 2.4% of our highways he's going to focus on. He said, I'm going to fix, 1,500 bridges. We have 617,000 bridges in America. That is 0.2%. And for that, they got up like trained SEALs. Now, what I do have to say, Scotty, is that I don't think that infrastructure is a major challenge for you in your district. Boy, I'll tell you what, the roads down there are nice around Orlando. Now, they're pricey because you got tolls every 5 seconds, but they're nice roads. Maybe that's why they're nice. But anyway, did you listen to the State of the Union address last night? I imagine you did as a political candidate. And what did you take away from it?
Well, I did. And it was very difficult to listen to because it's just more propaganda. It's just more of the stuff that we've been hearing that we know is not true. The left. And for some reason, I don't quite understand, but there are fewer and fewer people on the left who are starting to buy into this because they're seeing the reality of what we're experiencing with the inflation. I mean, 4-decade high of inflation that's just out of control. People feel it when they're going to grocery shop or when they're filling up their gas with the cutting down and killing the Keystone Pipeline. And they're just having their all talking points. But, one of the things that was shocking to me, or not shocking, but just kind of that stood out is I look at Biden speaking and then you got Kamala and Pelosi in the background. And I'm thinking, man, these are the three top leaders. What a joke and what a mess. So it was difficult to listen. It was difficult to stay. And by the way, this infrastructure and stuff that they're talking about, that's a great example of how they're going to be focusing on certain things, but we're going to lose the country, because passing that infrastructure bill was anything but, and all the other pork and all the crazy spending. And, the direction we're heading is so radically bad that we really do risk losing. So yeah, I listened to it. It was hard because it was just more of these radical, crazy talking points. And I can't get out of my mind. And the majority of people aren't talking about Afghanistan and how bad it was.
Right.
We funded the Taliban with ridiculous amounts of military grade equipment to helicopters and everything. Ukrainians are fighting for their lives, losing their lives with hardly anything. I mean, we don't talk about it enough anymore. What a mess.
And we're still buying oil from Russia in the midst of this. We haven't stopped buying oil, making the guy rich. It's crazy.
Yeah.
John, did you get a chance to listen to this last night, or were you one of the brighter people who decided not to pay attention? I think Scotty didn't have a choice as a political candidate. He probably had to watch it.
I was stupid enough to actually turn it on, and
you did watch it.
I didn't make it through it. Honest to God, I couldn't
melt.
I actually wanted to listen to the whole thing, and I just couldn't do it. It was ridiculous. I couldn't decide. Was the man giving a speech? Was he giving a State of Union address, or was he confused and think this is 2024 and he's running for re-election?
Right.
I couldn't make it out. It was idiotic.
It was definitely all over the place. Crazy stuff. I mean, and he took credit for stuff he didn't did. He didn't. Oh, that sounds like a Democrat. He didn't do. He's taking credit for a chip plant from Intel in Ohio, which was announced when Trump was president. He's taking credit for coming up with the jab, which he didn't come up with. No. He's taking credit for jobs that pre-existed, where people were sitting at home collecting checks because the government wanted them to get fat and lazy and unhealthy sitting at home. We want us all to have type 2 diabetes. You can't exercise. You can't go to the gym. You can't go to work. Sit home and eat your chips and get fat. He took credit for everything under the sun, and he didn't accomplish any of that. Scotty, I'll tell you what, on your website, job 1, the first issue, Protect Life comes next, Religious Freedom School, but fire Pelosi. You just talked about that. Selecting a new leader in the House in January of 2023. That's job 1, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. I mean, did you ever see that? Did you see that? There's like this meme going out there where Biden was talking about Afghanistan. And she stands up and what is that? I mean, I think she's lost her mind too.
Well, I think John, I think that she broke tradition. I think the tradition is when the president speaks, you're supposed to tear up his speech and break federal record-keeping laws and regulations for official documents. She didn't tear the speech up, John. Did you miss that part? I was shocked. She's breaking tradition.
Of course I missed. I didn't watch the whole thing. The tradition was at the end of the speech, not at the beginning of the speech.
Okay. Well, it should be more dramatic at the beginning.
At her introduction for Joe Biden, she comes off with this creepy smile, followed up with clapping like a spastic 5-year-old. I couldn't get past it. I'm like, what? Are you kidding? This is an 87-year-old woman, Speaker of the House.
She took Geritol just before. She took Geritol and a shot of vitamins, I guess. But Scotty, you were going to say something there.
Well, I mean, there's just so many things. But did you also catch that Biden said he called out instead of the Ukrainians, he said Iranians.
Iranians, yeah. I've got it all right here, guys. Let me just run through the hits real quick for Scotty.
Go ahead, yeah.
Putin will never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. Probably he also introduced a new word to the English language, becoming the Shakespeare of the 21st century, earnage. We now have earnage. That's what he described last night. And he talked about the devastating effects of climate change as opposed to the effects. Yeah, new words for the English language and phrases. Scotty, I think everybody missed that part about the infects. That was pretty interesting. But yeah, he definitely said the Iranian people, the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. I fell out of my chair. Anyway, let's get back to
that could have been a Freudian slip. You realize that, right?
I don't know. Listen, the deputy premier of the Chinese Communist Party resides 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Doesn't make many mistakes, does he? He just gets it right all the time.
He is perfect. Before we go any further, I remind everybody you're listening to WSMN 1590 AM and WSMN 95.3 FM. We're the Common Sense Conservative, live every Wednesday night, 7 to 9 p.m. We're here with Scotty Moore, candidate for Congress from Florida, asking him a lot of great questions. He's giving us a lot of great answers. And Scotty, I have one question with you.
Sure.
It's the midterms coming up. Joe Biden or Kamala or somebody's going to be in there. Some Democrats still going to be in as president for the next 2 years after the midterm. How do you see your ability to work with them? I mean, your experiences in life. How do you think that's going to be brought to bear to be able to work with them and tolerate them? And I know you're probably a tolerant person whenever it comes to a lot of things, but how are you going to be able to work with them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's really hard to work.
I know it'd be hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to really be hard. And here's the other thing. One of the job of Congress, and that includes the House and the Senate, is oversight.
Sure.
And we have had a lack of oversight here, whether it's Fauci and just the craziness that he's been allowed to do under oath, saying things that are totally wrong, lying. And you talk about Hunter Biden, and what about quid pro quo Joe and other things? Right. And so a lot of these things need to be investigated, and they haven't been. And so what good is it to have checks and balances built into our government system if they're not being used? Right. And so part of the job of Congress, I think, is to really start holding accountable. And by the way, one of the things that I loved about Donald Trump is he brought backbone and strength that we are not going to be playing, because for some reason we're trying to be nice and kind and polite and just like, oh, next time. And the Democrats are playing, it's a blood sport. We need to go after and be strong and go after. Listen, I'm willing to work with people who care about America and put America first. But for some reason, at some point in our history, which has been quite a while, the Democrat Party has abandoned, at least the leftist radical people. There may be some moderates, and I don't know why they're sticking with that. They've abandoned this nation, and they're clearly pushing an agenda that is anti-American. And it's hard you can't work with that. You just can't. And so I'm going to be going there. I'm going to be holding strong to the Constitution, where we're going, and holding our leaders accountable. And, I look forward to working with them, but I don't think I'm really looking forward to holding off a crazy, by the way, while this stuff is happening in Ukraine, where Ukrainians are trying to save their lives in Russia's, you just saw that they were pushing forward an abortion bill that was crazy. Joe Manchin, in a lot of his strength, he's had more backbone than Republicans, held off. And it was very, very radical. There's stuff that's happening that they're doing with the voter integrity, quote unquote. So they're just playing really, really dangerous tactics trying to destroy America. And we have got to hold the line and stop that.
So, well, there's a couple. Go ahead, John. Go ahead, John.
Well, I just wanted to bring in a listener question here, because it kind of segues into term limits. And how do you feel about term limits? And do you think that would help mitigate these issues?
Would it help? I don't know. I absolutely am in supportive of term limits. I don't think it was ever the intention of the original founders to have people like Biden and even Mitch McConnell and Pelosi just have these careers. And if you look at they're supposed to be public servants, but and they've got, like, I don't know what the salary, $170,000 salary, but they're walking away as millionaires. Right. I mean, there's something wrong about that. That's the very heart of we're selling away our future as a nation with that. And so absolutely, term limits are will it fix the problem? I don't know. I think it'll help. I think it'll help.
So semantics here, they are public servants, are publicly serving themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, term limits may not stop corruption and all that good stuff, but it will limit the bad a bad person can do. That's at least it'll do that. So.
Yeah. Well, it also helps reduce the concept of a career in politics as a permanent political class. I mean, if you want that, you can do it. Get elected to city council, serve for a few years, get elected mayor, serve for a few years, run for the state assembly, serve for a few years, run for Congress, then run for the Senate. You can do it. But, spending 47,000 years in the House of Representatives, as Nancy Pelosi has, or, Chucky the Crypt Keeper Schumer in the Senate there, it's just ridiculous. But Scotty, there's two things about Congress that I've always found frustrating, and you're going to be dealing with this when you get to Washington, D.C. The first is their penchant for running for office going, look, I sponsored 37 bills. A bill that becomes a law imposes on my freedom. Very few bills actually make the country better. They take away money from my pocket, or they take away my liberty. And people who are proud of that and stand on the record going, look at this, I've done this. I really have an issue with that. I don't know if that's something that is important to you. Do you think that we're overregulated? Maybe the role of Congress is not so much to produce all this legislation, or do you think maybe it's the right approach to come up with new laws, maybe just to wipe the old ones out? What's your thoughts on the role of Congress and its legislation happy agenda?
Well, I mean, two parts to that. Number one, I absolutely agree with you and that's one thing that Donald Trump did too, is try to deregulate, take away regulations. I really believe in a very, very limited, I mean, it's classic conservatism. By the way, we've kind of lost our way on that, but limited government. Government exists just for the very, very basics. I believe in state rights and putting things to the state and kind of working it out. However, I do believe that there are new laws that need to be coming into place when it comes into, for example, we're entering into new spaces with internet regulations and some of the craziness that's being abused. And so I'm still not looking forward to over regulating, but as we enter into new spaces and stuff, I think it's similar to entrepreneurship. Part of it's looking at a problem that needs to be being solved and solve that problem, but we need very little regulation. We need less of it and less laws. I think people are just trying to show, look at what I'm doing, when in fact it's just creating more of the problem. Listen, it's not like southern border. It's not like the reason why people are crossing over is for the lack of laws. We're just not enforcing it. So is the answer to write more laws? No, we've got too many already. We're not doing anything about it.
That's fair. Hey, John, I think we've picked up some echo in the background there all of a sudden. I don't know if you're catching that.
I'm not picking up the echo on my end, but it's possible. I did notice some anomalies in the sound quality. But
okay, it just came back. I guess we must have alerted the censors who are listening to the program.
FBI
says Agent McKillicuddy, please turn down the volume. They caught on to what we're doing here. Go get another FISA warrant real quick. Tell them it's because they're known domestic terrorists. They support parents at school board meetings. Anyway, sorry folks. That wasn't.
That's an issue in itself, though. You touched upon
Scotty's got something to say about that. I can see it.
It just makes me think of January 6th and where we're at right now. And I think we need to talk about that. We talk about the fact that the lack of due process that's happening, just where you see this narrative of the riots and destruction and everything, and people are, and by the way, members of Congress lobbying for people to have these funds, and it just is. We have lost our collective minds as a nation. My grandpa was born on my dad's side 1903, so the beginning part of the automobile coming in, and he died in 1995. So he lived almost a full century. If he were alive today, he'd be 118. And I wonder what on earth he would say about his America. I mean, he lived through World War I, the Great Depression, World War II. He raised 4 boys through the Industrial Revolution, and he'd be like, "You guys have lost your minds. What are we doing with what's going on here?" It's a political witch hunt. And that's all it is right now, what they're talking about. I definitely think that, listen, there's a place for protesting. I don't necessarily, I almost went to January 6th. I almost went there. I'm glad I didn't, because it would have been this huge mess and maybe even created tension for me. But the thing is it's being totally blown out of proportion. I don't necessarily agree that we should have gone in there and done that. But my point is the reason why we're not talking about is the fact that there was so much anger and frustration of just from what the Supreme Court didn't do and hasn't acted on, and unconstitutionality, the election integrity, and the fraud that happened. I mean, there's just so many different things. But then you talk about Epps, the guy who is the FBI plant, and I mean, all the different people who are instigating and pushing. No one's investigating them. This is ridiculous, and it's very anti-American, in my opinion. And it's the FBI and other organizations. What's going on with our nation?
Well, it's a very good question. What's going on with the FBI lying to the foreign intelligence? By the way, as a former counterintelligence agent, that's a process I had to use in order to get warrants on service members who were suspected of violating the Espionage Act. And so there's no equal justice here. Hillary Clinton admits that she violated the Espionage Act, which is a felony, and she isn't even charged with a crime. She's absolved of it by a criminal former director of the FBI, James Comey. Yeah. And then we see a service member who takes a photograph in a submarine, which is later deemed to be classified, and he goes to jail as a felon. It takes Trump to pardon him. His life is destroyed by this nonsense. There's no equal justice. But by the way, just Scotty, let me just be clear for you. The 6th of January, it's a red herring. I have hours of footage of a peaceful protest. I left at 14:25, never entered the steps of the Capitol, but observed what was happening up there. I have images and live video of false flag operators who weren't Trump supporters, who were trying to rile the crowd up. And at the end of the day, we're talking 300,000 to 500,000 people were gathered on the mall that day. On the west side. I don't know what was on the east side. I never went there. And there were 5 permits issued by the Capitol Police. Yet only 100 police officers showed up for 500,000 protesters. Ridiculous. And at the end of the day, a couple of dozen people broke into a largely unguarded and defended building, which they were allowed to break into as the police retreated. And a couple hundred foolish people who were excited walked into the building and were asked to leave, and then did so, and later hunted down like Canadian truckers having their accounts and their lives taken. So that's what really happened there. But the other point I want to get about Congress really quickly was that we talked about the regulation, but here's another thing. You mentioned checks and balances earlier. We have checks and balances in our government, in theory. But in my position, and this is why I want to get your take on this, my view on this is that Congress over the past 40 years has continually abrogated its responsibility. It has legislated away its own authority to the state, the deep state.
Yep.
So we allow the Environmental Protection Agency to act with the power of law for regulations they make up prosecuting Americans. And they're just regulations, but people go to jail as felons because Congress gave them authority instead of holding it in their hands. What are your thoughts? Do you think Congress has let us down and not done its job as a legislative body, checking and balancing the other two branches and legislating?
Yeah, I mean, they've done that in the process of growing the government, right? Creating all these extra institutions and everything, and then giving them powers that didn't exist, and they're taking it away from their responsibility as elected officials, by the way, to do that, to protect our union. And 100% I'm with you, and I'm 100% with you on the January 6th. It's a red herring. You know, Nancy Pelosi, she had the freedom. There were requests for extra police prior that didn't get, but no one's talking about that. The mainstream media, we all know that. And I think people are finally starting to wake up at how crazy the things are right now.
Right. Yeah, I think Congress has abdicated their role as legislators to the executive branch, to these agencies like you just mentioned there, so they can have basically an antagonist to their protagonist whenever it comes to reelection and fundraising. I think it's a big part of that. So and you talked about, say, January 6th and a number of other things. How is all that being received in your district, and how is your candidacy being received in your district?
Yeah, great question. Thanks. Being received really well. I think a lot of times people are looking at, listen, the amount of people that I talk to who some of the parents are so remorseful about what's happening with their kids, some of their 20-year-old kids, 30-year-old kids that have been indoctrinated over time through elementary to middle school to high school to then higher education, colleges and universities. And now they can't even have conversations with them because they're totally bought in with what's happening. Yet there are other people who are parents who are starting to see what's happening with their kids and how they're being targeted, and they're trying to protect them. And now you got the DOJ coming and calling them domestic terrorists. And so these are things that I think we need questions. I believe we need questions answered, and we need to hold the DOJ, Merrick Garland responsible for what are they doing? What kind of files do they have on parents? This is totally anti-American. And so there's an undergirding of just frustration, anger, tension. You know, you talked about the roads are nice. The problem is, and it's not a problem, but it's a challenge. There's so many people are moving here. We're not keeping up with the infrastructure. And where's the infrastructure dollars going? You know, we're the third largest state in the union, and we continue to grow, especially with how Governor DeSantis is leading. We're open. One of the things that I talk about, again, in reference with leadership, is I talk about leadership matters, that nations rise and fall. I talk about Venezuela. Look at Venezuela 20 years ago, where they were and where they're at now. They were thriving and rich, and they're desolate. And I have a lot of friends who are Venezuelans, and they tell me stories. It's crazy. I talk with people in Venezuela currently at this moment. We're heading that direction. And to bring it full circle here in Florida, I say, consider this. What if Andrew Gillum had won and Governor DeSantis had lost? Where would Florida be? You know, just to kind of help people really go there, because we're champions of the free state of Florida, but we could have been just like California and New York and Illinois and Michigan. You know, our economy would be destroyed, business owners, our kids, schooling, vaccine mandates, taking the jab. I mean, it would have been shocking. And so because of the freedom we have, people are flying in here wanting to come in. Even Nancy Pelosi, even AOC are coming in here.
Right?
Their hypocrisy abounds. You know, they're coming here, whatever, and then they're just getting caught.
Well, Scotty, we're going to lose you here in a couple of minutes because you've got another event to go to tonight. We don't make you late for that. And I'm not chasing you out the door. Stay as long as you can, but I know you have to leave shortly. So I want to give you this opportunity now. We all want to give you this opportunity now. Why should people in Florida's 9th Congressional District vote for Scotty Moore? Make your pitch.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Well, I'm running against Democrat Darren Soto. Darren Soto votes 100% of the time with Nancy Pelosi. Clearly, we can't keep the same direction where we're going. I believe that not all candidates are alike just because they call themselves conservative. We've learned more than ever now that we need to look at the candidate and see what kind of candidate, how are they going to lead? Are they going to lead with strength? Do they believe in America first? Do they support President Trump and where he's led? Or are they just kind of one of those convenient ones, maybe kind of like a Hillary Clinton, depending on what I think you want me to say, I'm going to say that. But then depending on the audience, I'll change. And you get kind of the Liz Cheney craziness of the world. I'm the guy. I think I come from a background of Christian ministry, which has strong integrity, values, hard work, raising funds to be able to get to where I'm at. I've got a young family. and I'm running because of my family, not because of the power or the money. I believe we have a problem in our nation where people care more about keeping their jobs in Congress and keeping in power than they do about supporting we the people, our constitutional republic, our constitutional freedoms, and even the protection and the future of our republic for our kids and even future grandkids. And so as they look at the field and who I've lived overseas, my wife's Brazilian. I have a district that has some Latins in there, and I speak Portuguese fluently. I speak Portuñol. It's a combinación de español y portugués. So it's like Spanglish, but for Portuguese and English and Spanish together. And so I believe I'm the right candidate. I understand a lot of the issues. I can connect with the voters. I think voters, as they connect with me and understand, they see that, okay, Scotty's the real deal. He's not running for the power. He's running because he cares about the country. And I'd love for you talked about my website. You can go to my website, Scotty Moore for Congress, Scotty with a Y, MOORE for Congress.com. I'm on Facebook, Scotty Moore for Congress, Instagram. Listen, I believe once you get to know me, once you check me out, you're going to see. And here's what I need. We have an end of the month is the final deadline for the first quarter. We need to report, like it or not, people judge your viability as a candidate on how much money you can raise. You talked about that money. It's a major problem, but it's one of those things that's a necessary evil. So if you could give $5 or 50 or whatever you can, 500, that helps me. Scotty Moore for Congress.com. I look forward to earning your vote. If you can't vote for me, you still can help me get elected. We're flipping the seat from blue to red, and that's what matters. So even if you're in Tennessee or if you're in Pennsylvania or if you're in New Hampshire, this still matters because we need to flip this seat from blue to red, get these voices out of there, get the right leadership in place, and start changing our country for the better. As President Trump would say, we need to help save America right now.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a great pitch. That's a great pitch, Scotty. Listen, as you said, I think just getting to know you, people would be interested in voting for you. I mean, if only I were Jorge Ramos and I got to vote wherever I wanted, like in Mexico, in California, hey, I could vote in Florida, vote in Pennsylvania. So, as Jorge Ramos, I'd vote for you, but I don't get that option. Todd, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah. And the district is very flippable because he won by 56% last time. So the margin of error right there is very doable. I think you can do it if you can grab the Republican nomination and people are motivated against Democrats. This is a very doable district. I do believe that.
Well, and he had the power of incumbency. He was running as an incumbent. That's right. And he didn't do well as an incumbent.
No,
that's exactly right. And here's something that's really interesting that I'm glad you brought that up. The NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, after what happened in Virginia, put out a tweet saying, hey, in addition to the 70 seats that we're already going after, there are 13 additional seats that we believe are extremely vulnerable. And the only seat in all of Florida they highlighted was Florida's 9th Democrat, Darren Soto. So not only what you said, Todd, is absolutely true, the NRCC believes it, and they brought it to a national level saying, like, listen, this matters. This is a football seat. We're going after it. I believe they're looking for who the right candidate is. And by the way, they're looking to see who can raise the money. And once they find who that candidate is, they're going to be all in behind because they're going to – now, George Soros, Zuckerberg, and all these guys are going to come in and start pouring dark money in to fight. And so we're not going to win 1-to-1 kind of thing, but I believe we got the right message. I believe it's the right moment. I believe I'm the right candidate. We got the right strategy. And when we get some of those dollars to fight back, they're going to see some pretty incredible. And I believe we're going to win. I really do.
There you go. The Colonel believes in you and he vouches for you. And that's good enough for me. So, I'm in for you.
All right.
Yeah, Todd, but we're not Jorge Ramos, man.
No, we can't come and vote.
In Chicago or lately Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yikes. All right. Well, Scotty, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. It's a real pleasure. Best of luck. We'll see about maybe getting you back on as you go further in the campaign and see how it's going, if you like.
Listen, you guys are amazing. I had a blast. In fact, I wish I could stay longer. I totally could do like 2 hours of this. You guys are energizing. Great conversation. Really appreciate the opportunity. And I appreciated meeting you. Thank you for being one of the good guys. You guys are fantastic. Tip of the spear, protecting our union, not only in your service, but also with your voice right now. Really needed. Keep it up, please, fellas.
Well, thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, Scotty Moore, 9th Congressional District of Florida, candidate for Congress, hoping to make a difference here in the House of Representatives. And let's get Nancy, the Wicked Witch of the West, literally from San Francisco, out of office.
Right? Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, by the way, she bought a house right on the beach down here, along with Obama and John Kerry. But they talk about climate change and they try to destroy our country. But they're the ones buying all the ridiculous. Their rhetoric and their hypocrisy. We got to call them out on it. It's crazy.
Right. And they're flying on their private jets or government jets that we fund. Right. So
So listen, we got to help save America. It's going to take all types of people. I'm going to be the candidate. You guys be the voice to help me get out there. I appreciate it, fellas. Thank you so much.
Here. God bless you, sir.
All right. Take care. Thanks a lot, Scotty.
All
right.
folks,
There you go, folks. There's Scotty Moore. Todd, how was that? That was, I told you this guy was the real deal.
I like that. He had the fire. He knows what he's talking about. And he didn't sit there and have to create just some rhetoric and name calling. He had a lot of original thought there. I thought so.
I like that part. I'm glad you pointed that out, because you can't build yourself up by tearing somebody else down. And he didn't bother tearing people down. He was talking about himself and building. That's an excellent show of character.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I don't tear anybody down except for Joe Biden,
except for liberals,
Democrats.
They do it to themselves. You
exactly. All I'm doing is pointing out the facts. You know,
pointing it out. You know, hey, that guy fell down.
Running.
Hey, that guy fell down. You know, you're not.
Did
lying
you notice
about it.
Joe fell down the steps going up the flight of stairs? Look, I get falling down the stairs, but falling up the stairs is a heck of an achievement. The guy's incredible.
You know, it's funny how Saturday Night Live many years ago with Chevy Chase made fun of Ford for falling down the stairs,
which never happened.
Right?
Like, not the way he did it.
Not the way he did it, absolutely. But they won't make fun of Biden falling down upstairs 3 times in a row. Come on now, come on, bring back Chevy.
that golf ball skit was funny. You know, Trump with the golf ball.
Right.
I missed that one. I don't watch that.
So that was a social media thing. You know, GIF, and it was Trump teeing off of the golf ball and hitting Biden in the head every time he fell down. And
I saw that. Okay, I did see that. Okay. Well, there's just so many memes. I forget what they are.
Right.
Well, folks, you're listening to the Common Sense Conservatives. We're about to hit the top of the hour in our break. But before we do, come back on the other side. We're going to talk about the State of the Union and a bunch of other things. We're going to talk about CPAC, talk about the Colonel's experience down there, the folks that he interviewed. But before we break, any thoughts that we should think about, or what do we want to talk about on the next end of this break? What's our lead-in topic? To entice people to come back.
We're going to talk about CPAC extensively. John and I were both down there. I spent more time, but I think we got a lot to talk about, don't we, John?
I think CPAC's a good topic. Things are hot in the Ukraine. I don't know if the Colonel has any kind of information or insight on that, but
I could talk about Ukraine for 10 hours. I did a 2.5 hour special program on it to Ukraine today. Had 2,500 viewers. It's pretty awesome.
Right.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And last show that we had, Russia had yet to invade. And I said, I don't know that they're going to invade tonight or whatever. And next thing you know, we get off the show, and next thing you know, they were invading. I'm like, well, son of a gun, I put my foot in my mouth on that one.
Well, I don't know if you put your foot in the mouth, but it was interesting because that was last week when I was at the airport on my way down to Florida. John was already in Florida. He beat me down there because he took the polluting method and drove his car down there. And I
drove my 8-cylinder Hemi, and I gassed on it big time.
He's a climate criminal. I took the most fuel efficient commercial flight. No, but seriously, no. So I was at the airport, and when I went off and I got down there, I got to my hotel, had some snafus getting in, their computers and things being down. Went into my room, turned the TV on to unpack my suitcase because I couldn't sleep. It was 1:30 in the morning, and son of a gun, if the Ukraine hadn't been invaded. So I went to see, okay, well, when's the president, the leader of the free world, going to talk? President Biden is scheduled to address the nation in 11 hours. 11 hours?
Yeah.
It could be over in 11 hours. If we had a nuclear war, it'd all be glowing. He's not even going to tell us what's going on. Listen, man, I went live. I did a 2.5 hour show right there at 1:30 in the morning. I went to bed at 4:30 and got up at 7:30. I mean, what's with Joe? Where's his dedication to this nation? He's supposed to be leading the free world. Well, he is from behind. Waits for the Germans to make him. And we can talk about Ukraine in the next hour as well, because I know a lot of people are interested in what's going on there. And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you up front, most of what you hear by the talking pundits and the so-called analysts and specialists on all the cable networks is just blather. They have no idea what they're talking about. Just look at what they say and see how wrong they are 8 hours later.
I wanted to make a comment on that one because I thought about that earlier. I was like, I need to talk about that on the show. You get all these guys that are just Washington kind of, talking heads. It's like they worked in the White House, or they worked in the, one administration or the other, or they worked on Capitol Hill. And most of them did media or communications, PR, things like that. And it's like they're interviewing them as if they're experts on defense policy, national security, or anything like that. It's like you're talking to the wrong people. These guys are there to give you rhetoric and spin to keep you tuned in and keep you outraged against the administration or what have you. These are the wrong people to be listening to. You need to go out there and look to the people who are actually worked in the defense industry, who've worked into that type of policy, and go out there and seek that information out, because it is out there. But watching, say, Fox, CNN, MSNBC all day long, with the exception of some of the experts that they will bring on, you're not going to get the information that you truly need. You're just going to get rhetoric and spin. So
there are a few informed, insightful people that show up in those programs.
There are some, yes, correct.
Sexton, General Jack Keane.
Yes, but they know what those guys are experts in that field.
Jennifer Griffin, but even she, I think, her analysis this time let us down. Seems like almost like she's carrying water for the Biden administration, even though she's a journalist, and she's a good journalist, of great repute on national security. But I felt a little let down by her this time around. But there aren't many of them. You know, Alexander Vindman is on CNN, looking like a Muppet sitting there talking. You know, this guy is a foreign area officer for Russia, and that's his assessment. I'm like, my goodness, we got to take another look at the foreign area officer program for Eastern Europe.
I'll tell you, after that whole thing went down, I was at the Eisenhower building, and I saw this guy. I'm like, how do I know that guy? And I was like, and once he walked out the door, I'm like, oh my God, that's Vindman. He's still here. He was on his way out, but I'm like, he was still here. I'm like, that's how I know him. That son of a gun. He looked at me like, why is this guy staring at me? You know, he felt it was awkward. It was an awkward thing. Then he slinked out the door, and I'm like, oh, that's the guy. You know, and I can't believe I couldn't put my finger on it.
Before we go to the break, just think about this. He was offered the defense minister position. Could you imagine if he's the minister of defense right now in the Ukraine? Oh my God, they'd be so screwed. It'd be over. They would have already lost. They would have already lost.
Well, he probably leaks up to Putin or somebody like that and say, well, it wasn't a perfect call. It wasn't a perfect call. He just said this. And Russia comes in, takes over. Good job, Vindman.
Well, we're not going to blow the bridges because we're going to need him after the war. What?
All right, folks, we'll be back at the top of the hour. Take care. God bless.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at wsmn.live.
USA Radio News with John Hunt.
With the war continuing in Ukraine and the Russians' convoy getting close to Kyiv, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken still believes the Russians do not intend to use nuclear weapons.
Russia and the United States have long agreed that the actual use of nuclear weapons would be devastating and have devastating consequences for the entire world. And as we've stated many times, including earlier this year, following the meeting between President Biden and President Putin in Geneva, both of our countries have stated that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought.
The White House outlined a new strategy for the next phase of handling the pandemic, a roadmap for living with COVID. The National COVID-19 Preparedness Plan includes a test-to-treat approach, which involves allowing pharmacists to issue prescriptions on the spot for people who test positive. This is USA Radio News.
Hi, it's Wayne Alaroot, and I want to tell you a real story. A husband and wife were driving home from dinner. While stopped at a light, they were suddenly surrounded by an angry mob, and the mob forced open the driver's side door, attempting to drag the husband from the car. But he reached for his Hero 2020 non-lethal weapon. He shot his attacker twice in the chest, unleashing a powerful chemical pepper irritant, forcing the attackers to back off, and the couple escaped safely. No bullets were fired, no lives were lost. I know how training and preparedness makes the difference. I've seen and reviewed many guns and self-defense products, and the Hero 2020 is one of the easiest to use, carry, and conceal. Plus, it saves lives. Hero 2020 is a high-powered, award-winning, non-lethal defender. That's why I have one in each of my cars and in multiple rooms of my home and office. To order your own Hero 2020, visit Hero2020.com. Use coupon code WAR for a special discount. Hero2020.com. That's Hero2020.com. State law restrictions may apply.
Texas has made its decision on who will run for governor in November.
Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott won his party's nomination on Tuesday to seek a third term in office. This sets up a November contest with Democratic former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. The two won their party primaries as the state held the first primary contest of the 2022 midterm elections. Texas primary voters also selected their party's nominees on Tuesday for the U.S. House of Representatives and other statewide offices. In the USA Radio News Midwest Bureau, I'm Katie Lewis.
Fitbit is now recalling about 1.7 million iconic smartwatches sold globally because the fitness product's lithium-ion battery can overheat, posing a burn hazard, according to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. About 1 million of the recalled smartwatches were sold in the U.S. at retailers including Best Buy, Kohl's, and Target, as well as online at Amazon.com from September 2017 through December 2021. This is USA Radio News.
Hi, this is Dr. Joel Wallach, and I want to tell you that arthritis is not a genetic thing. It's not a disease of aging. Neither is osteoporosis. Get a hold of my book. It's all in your head. It goes into the 25 different diseases you get when you have osteoporosis of the skull. These are all reversible. You take the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack, the MSM, vitamin D3, stay away from all the bad foods, including gluten, and guess what? You'll regrow all your bones, including your skull and your legs and your hips and everything else. Contact us at usaradiohealth.com. That's usaradiohealth.com.
A new study from Massachusetts General Hospital and the National Institutes of Health could offer some new clues about potential causes of long COVID-19 symptoms and possible avenues for treatment. The study said the many symptoms behind long COVID may in part be driven by long-term nerve damage, and this could help in treatment in the future. The Swiss company behind the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline said that they could not confirm reports that it had filed for bankruptcy, but did say it has terminated all employees following the recent geopolitical developments. The company, which built the gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, said its mobile and network lines are unreachable at this time. Major League Baseball has canceled opening day, with Commissioner Rob Manfred announcing the sport will lose regular season games over a labor dispute for the first time in 27 years after lockout talks collapsed in the final hours.
The calendar dictates that we're not going to be able to play the first two series of the regular season, and those games are officially canceled. We're prepared to continue negotiations. The clubs and our owners fully understand just how important it is to our millions of fans that we get the game on the field as soon as possible. To that end, we want a bargain and we want an agreement with the Players Association as quickly as possible.
The players need a minimum of 28 days for spring training, and the regular season was set to begin on March 31st. The players won't be paid for any missed games. For USA Radio News, I'm John Hunt.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives here on WSMN 1590 AM and 95.3 FM, also wsmn.live, and also Common Sense Conservatives. We're on Facebook and Truckers Independent Broadcasting on Facebook, many other outlets as well on social media as well. I'm Todd McKinley here in Northeast Tennessee, joined by John Groves there in Nashua in the studio, looking around, and also Colonel Chris Wyatt there in Central PA. Had a great guest on the last hour. This hour, we're going to jump right into it, probably talk about the State of the Union and Ukraine. And to kick off the State of the Union, I want to quote Joe Biden, and this is probably the best quote all night. He goes, "You can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine." Greatest quote of all night, I think. I don't know. I don't know. What about you guys? What do you guys think?
That was double talk. That's what that was. You know, he's over here saying we got to let the immigrants in. We can't keep them out. And then they're going to move them around the country, but then tell you, we don't need a wall. It won't keep out the vaccine or the COVID. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous statement all the way around.
Oh my goodness. I don't know what to say about that. I still think the line of the night with Joe Biden was Putin will never gain the hearts, the souls of the Iranian people. I'm not really sure what the Iranian people have to do with the Ukraine, but hey, I suppose I missed something there in my strategic studies and one of those degrees I was working on.
Well, I guess in Scranton, PA, whenever they teach geography, those two countries are side by side. I'm thinking maybe that's what it is.
I lived in Scranton, Pennsylvania, in Lackawanna County, and they didn't teach any such nonsense. Joe is not from Scranton. He was still wearing diapers. He was still wearing diapers when they moved to Delaware to avoid taxes.
Oh no, Corn Pop and all those guys with his hairs, and the kids. And
oh gosh, see, if you're trying not to abuse the guy, you can't help but abuse him. Did you see the creepy video of him with all these people being sworn in, touching their children? Oh my goodness. Yeah. One after the other. What a creep. If he's a doddering old fool and a grandfather, I could see it being affectionate to other people's kids as a grandfather. But He only did it to the little girls, not to
Right,
the little
right.
boys. Put his
Well,
hand around their waist, touching their head, kissing their forehead, rubbing their jaw. What the heck is with this guy?
Well,
It's too much touching. You
I'll
know,
have to share. I'll have to share my photos I have with him whenever I was departing the White House Communications Agency. I had people using my camera to take photos, and of course, we had the official photographer taking photos as well. And you watch him go from, because I had my girlfriend there with me at the time, and you watch him go over and just get close talking with her, hands on her, all this stuff, and then he puts his arm around me as he pulls me in and all this stuff, and it was very odd the way he went about it. And I thought, you know what, maybe he's just being an old grandfather, whatever. And I didn't get really creeped out necessarily at the time. And I'm thinking maybe he's just an old grandfather. Then I got to watching more of the videos and watching more of the news, because at this point he'd been vice president for 6 months, and I'm thinking, I think he's just an old guy. You know, that's the way he is. Then I watched all the different videos. I'm like, he's an actual creeper. He's an actual creeper. That's what's going on here. And I'll post those videos or those photos at some point.
No, it's really disturbing. But anyway, that's just minor stuff compared to the destruction of U.S. foreign policy, the destruction of our fiscal responsibility. He had the audacity to say that he reduced the budget deficit more than anyone. What? You spent $12 trillion this year. The budget's only $6 trillion, and that's $2 trillion more than it should be. He spent $6 trillion off books, and he says he's balancing the budget. You're going to have to subtract $7.6 trillion to balance the budget. Give me a break.
Again, Scranton math, maybe. I don't know. No, I'm kidding.
Quit picking on Scranton. He's from Delaware. He's from Delaware. First in the nation in stupid senators.
Right. Well, it's the size of Shelby County, Tennessee, which Tennessee, I mean, not a big state population-wise, but it's only the same size of one of our counties, for crying out loud. Come on now.
well, the only good thing ever came out of there was a Roth IRA, Delaware.
Yeah, right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and of course, now I was going to pick on somebody else, but they're not involved in all this, so I won't pick on the DuPont. So never mind.
Let's leave them out of it. But let's talk about. You want to talk about CPAC now?
CPAC. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Conservative Political Action Conference. It's been going on for 49 years ago when it started. I don't know if they had one every year, but 49 years ago. So we're coming up the 50th anniversary, and they hold it in many places. They do it in Japan. They do it in Italy. They do it in Texas. It's going to take place later this year in Houston, in Texas. I'm debating about whether to go to that one as well. But this was an incredible event. We had a little trouble with John's creds, his media creds there. They didn't quite complete them properly. So I had to keep going to the booth and like, hey, over here. Hey, over here. Hey, pay attention to me. I felt like Nancy Pelosi. Pay attention to me. Anyway, no. So we managed to get his cred straightened out. He's able to get in there the second day, and I'll give you my initial thoughts, and we'll get John's thoughts, and we'll come back and forth. But I thought it was an absolutely amazing event. I met some truly incredible people. And if you think it's just, people like Trump and stuff, like, no, I'm talking about people like Scotty Moore and people, just average conservatives hitting the road, trying to make it happen. I saw incredible diversity of faith, Christians, evangelicals, Jews, some Muslims I met there as well. I saw diversity of skin pigmentation as well, Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Caucasians, every color of the rainbow was there. It was amazing. And I saw more women than men, and I saw so many young people. Look, I've never been a person, even when I was 18 or 20 years old, to get all this, look at all the young people. But there were really a lot of young conservatives there. John, you got in on the second day. You were with me. We did a number of interviews. You got to check out the place, the main ballroom, the biggest meeting room in all of Florida, too. It's massive. Thousands of people can sit in there. And the whole building is just massive. We were only on one, basically like in a U shape. We're only on two portions of U. The other portion was just a place we walked in. Never even saw the whole side of that building. John, what are your thoughts on and reflections on CPAC, since this is your first time doing it as well?
I thought it was pretty amazing. Like you said, it was crowded. There was a lot of people there. There was a lot of diversity. Incredible amount of people. The booths and stuff that they had different booths for podcasters. So if you're a broadcaster or podcaster, they had a booth set up for that. You can get set up for that. They had television broadcasting, that's where you were hanging out, where we first saw Pompeo come in.
That's right. Yeah. Mike Pompeo spoke there. Yep.
And then that was before he did his speech. They were in the main room where everybody was seeing it on TV. That was it. Everybody was seeing it on TV. It was just that one room.
Right.
Yeah, I think he was being interviewed by America First or something like that. That we saw him being interviewed.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah, and that's when he sat down. I'm like, is that Mike Pompeo?
I was telling you when he walked in, I'm like,
60 pounds. It looked like he lost. He was slim. He was
looking good. Yeah, and I hate that I didn't get to make it down this year. I've been to CPAC a number of times, and I've been to the CPAC 365 events in a couple other cities that they have it in. And I can relate to our candidate Scotty Moore there. working Radio Row back in 2018, and of course trying to drum up some support and endorsements and all that good stuff. And sometimes it's hard, especially if you're going up against an incumbent like I was, one of those deals. But going up against a Democrat potentially for him, probably maybe a little bit easier for him to maybe get some support, hopefully, unless there's a leading candidate or a more well-known person running against him. I'm not sure. But I can relate to his experiences in 2018, and it was fun for me, I can tell you. But at the same time, anybody who would be willing to interview me, I would sit there and talk to them as long as they wanted to, and it was a great experience for me doing that. And of course, going just as a regular attendee as well was unbelievable. And I'm envious of your guys' time down there. I really am.
We were missing you. We were missing you. We were kind of, but you ran command center for us. You were the guy that would get arranging. So Todd knows people. Yeah. So he's making phone calls and stuff. So he's like, I got Chris Wyatt down there. He's doing interviews. Let me get you hooked up with him. Next thing you know, man, somebody's showing up and Chris and I were standing there on Friday interviewing him.
Yeah, there were a couple of bigger names. I mean, really big names I reached out to. But they had a schedule already laid out that they weren't able to do it, and I did get messages back apologizing for that, but had a few bigger names lined up, and I almost was tempted to reach out to people I know that are working for President Trump, but I was like, you know what, that's not going to work out. He's not going to come do an interview or call you guys back there. So I was like, I'm not even going to even ask because that looked like an idiot.
No, and in fact,
almost did.
That wouldn't have happened, but his speech was only an hour and 27, which is not one of his typical Trumpian speeches, but so he was, I don't know, his press for time where he just felt he made his message. But I did see Pete Hegseth when I was outside. I hadn't seen the hotel. I walked out the back there the Saturday during a break between speakers, and I was and I saw there's like a golf course behind. I was looking around, took some pictures. As I turned to come back, and here comes Pete Hegseth with a Secret Service guy and a sheriff with a sidearm or a rifle and body armor. I'm like, why does Pete Hegseth need these security guys? He's a Fox News guy. What's going on here? And then I realized they were walking outside to avoid all the people in the hotel, walking around the golf cart trail to go, and there's a foot trail there to walk down to the backside where Trump was at in the green room, essentially.
Gotcha.
So they were with him because he hadn't been pinned properly, so they got to clear him, that sort of thing.
Got to be escorted, correct.
Right. So he's got to be escorted. So I figured it out. It wasn't for him. It was to protect the president. And then I realized because he went back, he spoke just before the president came out. He came out and tried to fire the crowd up. It was it was pretty incredible. I will say this about Voldemort's speech, the name we dare not mention. It was a very political speech. What I mean is it's something a professional politician would deliver, and it was spot on, point after point after point after point after point. It wasn't a Trumpian speech of the zingers and the Lion Ted and the little Marco and all that stuff and Sleepy Joe and lock her up Hillary. None of that stuff was in there. It wasn't low energy. It was good energy, but it wasn't over the top Trump like he normally does, which led me to conclude a couple of things. Now, I don't have any evidence of this, but it seemed that way. One, he's maturing as a politician, perhaps. Okay. Two, he's distracted by something, whether it's these false allegations against him or it's perhaps something one of my colleagues in the media box said. He said, it seemed to me that Trump really took notice of the fact when he made the comment in his speech. He said, I never realized just how important being president is. And we were talking about, or he was talking about Ukraine at the time. So I have this sneaking suspicion that Trump in some way might, no one else has said this, so this is a first exclusive from here. I could be completely wrong, but I got the impression after having that conversation with the other guy, and he agreed with me, that maybe Trump feels that his loss let the nation down, and now we're in the crap because of it. And he's feeling a little guilty, and he wants to fix it. That was my takeaway from it. Now, that could just be smoking something, that's not licensed except in Colorado. I don't know. But, it's just, that's the feeling I got from it. But nonetheless, the speech was spot on. It was good. It was really good. It just wasn't Trumpian, if you get my point. There was no red meat for the crowd.
Yeah, but what you say makes good sense. But at the same time, perhaps because it's not quite campaign season yet, he's not throwing out the rhetoric to fire people up. He just wanted to hit a number of points and then leave the stage.
Yeah, but fair point. But I would say that in January, or was it February? I think it was January. When he went to Arizona, he was still in that mode. He was still in that mode.
And he was still big rally. Yeah.
And he was still talking about the election and all this other stuff. That was barely even. He did what I've been asking Trump to do: focus. Forget 2020. We can't fix it. Even oh my goodness. Wait till 2,000 Mules comes out. You guys know about this? Dinesh D'Souza's project, 2,000 Mules?
No, tell us about it. I heard about the title, but I didn't hear anything about it. No information.
He has put together a film. They have used cell phone tracking towers. They have used cameras, closed circuit cameras that were placed in places, and they just gave you enough to salivate your glands. Now, apparently he wrote, this is published, but this is the actual movie now. So he's published it. Now the movie's going to be coming out soon. The movie shows you mules who were paid operatives for the Democrats to throw mailboxes and stuff them full of ballots. The same person dropping one ballot after another, and some places dumping a bunch of ballots off the time, holding up their phone and taking selfies so they could get paid for it and all this stuff. This is unbelievable. I've never made these claims about the election. I've heard this sort of stuff, but I can't wait to see this movie come out. It's going to be amazing. It's going to expose the Democrats for the frauds that they have always been in this country, whether it's Daley in Chicago or it's the Pelosi family in Baltimore when he was mayor. It is going to be earth-shattering. And once again, Dinesh D'Souza, one of America's greatest imports.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, I hope to see that.
2,000 Mules.
2,000 Mules. Did you guys get a chance to watch? And I haven't watched any of them. Any of the rebuttals or the post comments, anything like that? No, wasn't interested from either side. Right. Well,
it sounds like you're going somewhere with this, though.
Yeah. No, I was just curious because I'm just reading, what some of the headlines are in some of the different outlets about what Kim Reynolds said and how, she was so divisive. Of course, that's the MSNBC and CBS talking about that nonsense. I'm like, I don't think it was too divisive. I mean, I saw snippets of it, but I didn't get to watch the whole thing. I just wonder if you guys had a take on that one. But anyway.
No, I didn't have a take on it. I expect this is okay. I'll summarize it for you without having watched it. The person from the Democratic Party came out and said the president's amazing. He saved the country. It was nearly destroyed by this evil criminal Donald Trump. But the president hasn't gone far enough. We need to teach people the right way. Critical race theory. We all know that white people are racist, and we need to destroy our foreign policy because America is a shameful nation with a horrible history. And the president must go further. Now the Republican response: Joe Biden is a walking cadaver. Case closed.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with it.
I just saved you
the short
25
version.
minutes. 25 minutes.
Right. Well, it kind of reminds me whenever you just said that, like a crustacean that sheds, and it like it's a shell. He's like the shell, basically, that's left.
Joe Biden is like those poor animatron versions of Godzilla movies we watched as kids. He's Godzilla, waiting for the Japanese jets to fly by on strings and shoot little rockets at him. Yikes.
Right, yeah. A guy in a suit, you see his underwear because the back's not zipped
exactly.
up.
That's Joe Biden, man. He's 21st century Godzilla. That's who he is. And not the really cool one in that lame movie that was made where it's actually good graphics. But hey, the theme for this year's CPAC was awesome, awake, not woke. That was brilliant.
I like that hat. That's nice. Yeah, that's a good slogan right there. Absolutely.
That's absolutely brilliant.
They had you and your RC over there. They had a what was that, the Coca-Cola ad?
Oh my goodness,
there.
that was so
You can
funny.
find that on YouTube, by the way. If you go to YouTube and just
there.
Google or type in Coca-Cola, it's a pretty neat little video.
Yeah, it's diabetes is here to stay. Yeah, no, it's that was brilliant. And there was some good ads. The 2,000 Mules, they held that till late until Saturday is the first time I think it showed it. I almost fell over. I watched that first time. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I can't believe it. It's just that dirty and underhanded. And it's so funny because they deflect everything they do. They accuse the other party of, and it's so pathetic. It's really nice to meet people like Scotty Moore, who are dedicated, loyal, faithful Americans who believe in the Constitution. And I can't see any hidden agendas. And I met several people like that this weekend. Now, I will say this about the event, and CPAC might bar me from future attendance by saying this, but this is just the truth. And I believe in the truth. I have a sense that there is a group of elites, even in the conservative movement, and they're there for themselves and for notoriety. And you're not going to, and there was one person I met whom I will not name, who struck me as that, a very famous person. And I was off-putting. I said something to this person and they just I don't know. They didn't blow me off, but I got this, oh, okay, I see why you do this. It's all about you and your fame and fortune. Now I get that from virtually everybody in the Democratic Party, but I rarely get it from true conservative. I get it from rhinos. This person isn't a rhino, it's true conservative. That's but there's definitely an air of eliteness about certain people. Having said that, A lot of people are truly approachable. And let me just tell you some of the people I met very quickly. Okay. So
Sure.
Jeffrey Lord, who is a legendary conservative, lives near me in central Pennsylvania, not far, 10 miles away, actually. I've wanted to interview him on my old program before it got shut down. I had to start a new one for a long time. Somebody in the local Republican organization told me that they could make it happen. Gave them my card and nothing ever came of it. So I go to the restroom to do my business. I walk over to wash my hands like a good adult. And I look over in the mirror next to me and I'm like, that looks like Jeffrey Lord. And I look down at his big credentials. It's Jeffrey Lord. I'm like, Jeffrey Lord, fancy meeting you here. I've been trying to get you on my program for a while. I explained the whole thing to him. He goes, well, as we walked out, let me give you my card. So Jeffrey Lord will be appearing in my program. That was pretty cool. I did an interview of the guys from New Jersey. The guy whose parents are from Ghana and he grew up in Jersey, and the other guy, David Herrera and Billy Prempe, those two guys. And when that was over, I look over and there's a huge crowd over at the other side. And the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina had been wandering around. The guy's a rock star. I mean, really big guy. I don't know much about him, but people are following him around like he was Prince or something. Like, woo, or the Rolling Stones.
He's a nice guy. He really
and he had a fan base. They're following him. So he was talking while I was doing the interview. Once I finished the interview, there's still a big crowd over there. So I thought I'd go over, maybe pass him a business card, maybe see if I can't talk to him since he's so popular. But it wasn't him anymore. It was Kevin Sorbo, Hercules, Captain Dylan Hunt of the Andromeda Ascendant. The Systems Commonwealth will rise again. Listen, Kevin Sorbo, a devout Christian, a good, great American, was over there. And I kind of went over, got a selfie with him. And then I figured, well, that's it. I didn't want to, he gets lots of requests.
Sure.
But then the next day I was down on the television row on the side by the big ballroom. And I walked up and Danielle Neuschwanger, who was one of the interviewees we had on Friday, the candidate for governor of Colorado.
Right.
She was standing there talking. I saw her husband. He wears a cowboy hat because he's a rancher. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? He's like, hey, how's it going? We're talking. I look over. Oh, there's Danielle. Oh, she's talking to Kevin Sorbo. So we walked over and we're standing there. And Kevin Sorbo is really engaging, talking to everybody, taking all the requests for selfies. He sees me. He recognized me because the beard. I got to keep the beard now. It's so distinctive. Everybody recognizes me. So it's kind of like ZZ Top thing. So Sorbo starts including me in the conversation and talking to all of us, a genuine, real conversation. And so I said, listen, Kevin, here, you mentioned your brother had been in the Army. And listen, I have a program. I'm sure you get 1,000 cards a day. Everybody gives you one of these. Let me hand you a card. And if you're interested, my audience would love to hear about your upcoming movie in South Africa, because he mentioned it the day before when I was talking to him. And I said, I have a large audience. Anyway, so he's like, okay, thanks. And he put it in his pocket, and I figured that was the end of it. Next morning, I had a kind of like a form email and had his social media. And then it said, it was great meeting at CPAC. And I was like, so I thought it was a form thing. So I responded and I said, hey, thanks a lot. I mean, whether you sent this or you have people to do it for you, whatever, it's a classy move. And it's ironic because I just spent my morning sending emails out to people I interviewed yesterday and sending them links to where their videos are and thanking them for their time. So that's one professional to another. Thank you very much for that. I'd love to get you in the program, to come on and talk about South African movie and such, yada, 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 and your brother if you like. And I sent it off, but it wouldn't go anywhere. So I thought it was a no reply email. And then I'm like, oh, well, that's it. I'll never hear from Kevin Sorbo again. Then the next morning, I get up and there's an email from Kevin Sorbo. Yeah, this sounds great, Chris. Let's set up for the week of the 21st of March. Yeah, result.
Oh, wow. So the week of the 21st, huh?
Kevin Sorbo, Hercules, and Captain Dylan Hunt. Yeah, he'll be on my program.
Well, maybe you toss out the idea to come on this program too.
Well, I could do that once I got him on my program, but I had to get him there first.
Yeah, so you got to land him.
So great Kevin Sorbo, really looking forward to that. Now, another person that Todd, you're probably familiar with him. I don't know if John's familiar with him. I know I'm just in passing familiar with him, but there's a gentleman from Virginia who caught fire a few years ago. He
Special
came out.
Forces, yeah.
No, not Ivan Rakin.
Okay, sorry.
No,
I went the wrong way.
but actually, Ivan plays a role in this. Ivan and I have been linked on LinkedIn for a number of years. Yeah. I support his candidacy. He's a reserve component guy, and he ran for governor, I think it was. Not this time.
Senate. I think Senate was.
Senate was the Senate. Yeah, he ran for Senate. Anyway, he's known in Virginia. So he also is a guy big into physical fitness, did all these runs and walks to raise awareness and money and things. Anyway, so Ivan and I know each other. So this one person kept floating around. There's a real big celebrity. People want to glom on him all the time, and they love him. He's a conservative. And anyway, so Not Ivan, I'm talking about. So I'm sitting there with these two gentlemen that I decided to eat, at the hotel after the conference is over rather than rush off because there's a long line to get out of there. So I sit down. I was going to sit by myself, and this guy who's running for office in Maine, which we'll get on the program here coming up soon. He sits down. I sit down with him and some other guy, and people keep coming by. Then I ran, so I keep interrupting, get up, handing my cards. People are coming over, mentioning my beard. I was kind of like a minor celebrity with my beard. And then I look over, and this lady's got this weird shirt on, and I'm like, okay, she's got some interesting saying on there, and she's talking. I'm like, that looks like Ivan. So I get up before they leave, and I walk over and says, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Ivan, it's Chris Wyatt. And he's like, I'm from LinkedIn. He goes, when did you grow a beard? Anyway, so we start talking. The ladies left, and my dinner's over, already paid. So he says, hey, let's chat. I want to go see if Lindell's still here. So we start walking down, and we get almost to the center of the building. John, you know where the escalators came up and the CPAC sign was, just before that in the main part of the hotel. And he walks up and, hey, Scott Pressler. They're buds. Scott Pressler.
That's
Scott
Pressler. He knows everybody.
Scott Pressler, of course, if you don't know who he is, he's a internet phenomenon, a celebrity. He came out openly for Trump and literally came out because he's also gay. And that kind of ran counter to the narrative. He's an interesting guy, long hair, lanky, tall guy. And I didn't want to go up and be a fanboy and say hi to him. If I got an interview with him, that'd be fine. But it turns out Scott's a very personable guy. So Ivan and I and Scott are talking. We took a couple selfies, and then Ivan went down to see if Lindell was there. I said, I want to hang out and see if I can ask Scott to come to my program. Right. Scott handed me a card. Of course, it's got his handler's information on it. I said, well, am I going through a handler? Or is it you? He goes, no, it's my handler. Let me give you my personal number. So Scott Pressler will also be coming on the program, and I'll see if I can't get him on this program here. And it just went on and on like that. Now, next week, I invite him tonight, but he had another commitment. Next week, a very fascinating guy. And if you watch the program on my channel, you will have seen this. He's a candidate for Congress, but he ran for governor last time and almost won. Phil Rizzo. Phil Rizzo will be on the program, a fantastic New Jerseyan, a homegrown New Jerseyan. Right. He will be with us next week on the program. That's the plan. He is very dynamic, very engaging, and he's a rock solid constitutional conservative. And listen, guys, that was the best part about this. And I wrote an article which was published in South Africa, focusing on the U.S. and South Africa. And what I said basically is that conservatives take heart. Right. You're not alone, because it feels like you're alone with the deep state and the leftist oppression in the penal colony of Australia, in New Zealand, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in France, in South Africa, in Canada, in the USA. There's no safe haven for liberty-loving human beings to these days. And I said, after having been there, it was so refreshing to be around people who believed in faith, family, the Second Amendment, and civil liberties and restrained government. On the way down there, I met a gentleman on the plane who we were talking. He said, let me offer you a counterpoint here, Chris. I said, go ahead. He's a nice guy. He's about 10 years older than me, maybe a little bit older. He said, but isn't it the role of the government to stop misinformation? It can be harmful. I said to him, I said, nah, let's make up a name. I'll call him, Sebastian. Sebastian, define misinformation for me. Because right now, misinformation is anything that undermines the integrity or the popularity, which is the real issue, the popularity of Congress. I mean, we have the Department of Homeland Security issuing edicts saying that Americans following the law and exercising their First Amendment rights to free speech are domestic terrorists because they're undermining confidence in the government. Let me tell you something, folks. For the last 20 years, the average rating for Congress in every poll from every pollster was between 9 and 13%. I don't think you can undermine confidence in government any more than Congress has done on its own accord. Right. So calling me American, this is frightening. In addition to that, we have nonsense like Jen Psaki, Peppermint Patty, as Ted Cruz called her. Now I'm going to stick with that. I used to call her Circle Back, Broke Back, but now I'm going to call her Peppermint Patty. Peppermint Patty violated the Constitution as an official representative of the U.S. government, encouraging they're undermining our civil liberties because they can do it. They're private organizations, but the government can't. So since they can't, they're threatening these tech giants. Well, we don't think you're doing enough to censor these people who are spreading misinformation. What's misinformation? Would misinformation be Dr. Fauci telling us that N95 masks don't work? Remember that? They do work for their intended purpose. But because he didn't trust the American people, he's an arrogant. I can't say it on air because the FCC will take offense.
I almost did, and I was like, wait a minute, this isn't just a podcast, it's a radio show too.
That's right.
I almost said it. Sorry.
I've been on radio since the 1980s, so I know when to hold my tongue most of the time, although I think I slipped last week. But anyway,
it's that was 2 weeks ago.
That was a good one, though.
It was the first time anyway, but seriously, it's frightening. They're trying to threaten, cajole, force, coerce the private sector into carrying out the government's desired outcomes of silencing opposition speech. This is not America. This is frightening. This is something that should have every American citizen up in arms instead of sitting back in your lap of luxury with your iPhone or your Samsung, with your DSTV or your Dish TV or your cable, whatever you've got, and taking your kids to soccer. You need to wake up because it's all disappearing as we sit here. And the last line of defense is getting people who are constitutional conservatives in the government to turn this thing around.
Absolutely.
I gotta say, Chris, this is really nothing new. This sort of thing has gone on in the past. It's just that with social media and our means of communication today, we're becoming more awakened to it. We have a realization that it exists. It's always existed, but our realization is just how deep it goes. As opposed to before.
Well, I
30
would
years ago, you were a conspiracy theorist saying this stuff. Today, people are like, no, it's just a conspiracy.
I would say we saw this level of abuse by the federal government in the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s until the Church Commission. And then it was reined back in and government was put back in its place briefly.
Right.
But at the end of the Cold War and the listless domestic and foreign policy about where do we go? We're the unipolar power. What do? We want engagement and enlargement. That was Clinton's national security policy. What did that mean? Everybody gets to join the tent, without holding them accountable for human rights and liberties and stuff, and free trade. So we kind of lost our way. And then after 9/11, the Patriot Act, I wasn't an opponent of the Patriot Act because I was inside the wire and I knew we had measures to prevent abuse. But those measures were ignored by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, by the National Security Agency, by the Department of Justice. And John, I would agree with you saying that we've seen abuses before, but I think we're at an unprecedented level. I mean,
yes, because it's escalating.
They spied on the president of the United States. Look, they do that in South Africa and in Africa and in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, but
not
Watergate
in the United
was
States.
doing the same thing, right? They were
No.
They had microphones in the White House. Was it not Nixon who had them removed?
No, Nixon put the microphones there. You're mixing.
Put them in.
Watergate was a hotel. They bugged the Democratic National Committee, and they failed. They went in, they broke in, breaking and entering to listen to what the Democratic National Committee was planning. The Watergate Hotel is where they're meeting at, so they wanted to spy on them for the Nixon campaign. The irony is Nixon was going to run to a landslide. He didn't even have to do this. If he'd never done it, he would have served his full second term, and the history of this country would have been very different.
I do believe there was a time when they had microphones on the walls of the White House.
No.
The president got upset about it. He had them removed. Lyndon
Johnson had his own taping system. He had that one removed, but he also put his own in though. So the one so that's why he got caught. The 18 minutes of missing conversation on the tape that was recorded over or erased. That's one of the reasons he got in trouble. His own taping system got him in trouble too.
Right. That wasn't someone spying him. It's him recording things for whatever. He was paranoid. Nixon, for whatever was good about him, he was a paranoid guy.
Oh yeah, and I think it was John Dean under oath mentioned the taping system, and that's how Congress found out about it. Yep. Otherwise, nobody would have known about it.
Yep.
Yeah,
and that's what happened. Yeah.
So later this month, I guess the Senate has already decided it's confirmation time for Judge Jackson. It starts on March 21st, which is whenever you're going to have Kevin Sorbo on your show, I believe. So that's set to start. I'm wondering if there's going to be any fireworks, or is this going to be just one of those pro forma where they kind of go through the motion and she's going to get confirmed, or do you think Republicans are going to have anything on her that they're going to push back against, like the Democrats did the last couple of years?
Well, first off, I take exception to the lunatic and the ludicrous argument that she's an eminently qualified jurist. She has been on the appeals court for 12 months.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's not eminently qualified. That doesn't mean she can't be a good Supreme Court justice, but they're already lying about who she is and what she says. By the way, most of her decisions, over 3/4, have been overturned on appeal. That's a very bad statistic for a judge to have most of your decisions overturned on appeal. Those are 2 points that need to be addressed fully. But of course, the cowards in the Senate won't raise those issues unless Ted Cruz is there, then he'll raise them. But the rest of them won't raise the issues because they don't want to be called racist. If you raise those legitimate questions, you're not a racist.
No.
I don't care if she's purple or blue. Just like I think it's inappropriate for what's her name there on the court there? Only I, as a Latina, can make
Sotomayor.
these decisions. Yeah, Sotomayor. Yeah. Listen, Sotomayor, You're not a Latina on the court. You're an American judge. That's what you are. You represent white, brown, black, blue, green, Christian, yellow, male, female, trans. You represent all Americans, and you are there to adjudicate laws that conflict with the Constitution or to determine if the Constitution, not to go, well, as a Latina, I will decide this because this is in the interest of Latinas. If that's what you're doing, then you're a fraud on the court. And that's what she argued in her confirmation. She never should have been confirmed. No. Neither should Kagan. Neither should Kagan.
She's attempting to rule from the bench. Exactly what she's doing.
Well,
legislate from the bench. I'm sorry, I said it wrong.
Legislate, rule, that comes down the same.
Absolutely.
But yeah, they do that. They tend to try to legislate from the bench, and it's a sickening process. In which case, our democracy suffers, or the republic suffers.
Well, you can't blame them. It's worked for 50 years, ever since the ludicrous passing of Roe versus Wade. I mean, how can the government weigh in on something it has no authority over? There's no mention of abortion in the Constitution. That's a right specifically under Article 10 or the 10th Amendment reserved for the individual states. To have the federal government lead into this and try to bring nonsense like the Commerce Clause and other stuff in there and equal protection is bogus. That, under the Burger Court, was one of the most disastrous courts in this country. Oh, it extended liberties and freedoms. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Stop lying. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment ended all these issues, and then Democrats in the Deep South, particularly, but across the country, undermined the rights and freedoms of Black Americans for nigh on a century, passing Jim Crow laws, having lynch parties, hunting down people, murdering people, intimidating people, putting poll tax in place, literacy tax, landowning, all the things that were eliminated. And they brought them all back, the Democrats, their shameful history of racism and bigotry in this country, which they try to pretend Republicans are. Every time they try this, I just shake my head. You do realize, of course, the Republican Party was founded on one position, not lower taxes, not big business, not military, the abolition of the evil institution of chattel slavery in this country. And guess what? They achieved it. Not the Democrats. They fought it. The Republicans achieved it. And every shameful president who has done something against Black Americans in particular, but also other Americans in the history of this country, has been a Democrat. Andrew Jackson, who stole the land from the Seminole, the Choctaw, and the Cherokee, and forced them on the Trail of Tears in the dead of winter, dying from dysentery and typhus and other things, and stole their land and speculated, becoming multimillionaires by thieving. That's the history of the first Democratic president. Andrew Johnson, a shameful criminal who is in the White House. Then Woodrow Wilson, who segregated the federal workforce in the 20th century after it had been integrated for decades. And then, shamefully, the first ever, this will be a stain on America's history into perpetuity. The first motion picture ever aired in the White House was The Birth of a Nation, a propaganda film praising the Ku Klux Klan. Why? Because Democrats love the Klan. Why? Because they ran it. They were mostly the members. Then we have the racist Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who in history books, they try to delude us and tell us he was a great American, the Great Society. He did all these wonderful things. He's a racist, an elitist scumbag racist from New York who put Americans of Japanese descent in concentration camp because the color of their skin was wrong and their eyes were slanted. Therefore, he didn't trust their integrity and their loyalty to this nation. And the list goes on and on. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 should have been the Civil Rights Act of 1955. It was watered down and skipped by the Democrats in 57.
They had civil rights acts in the 1800s post-Civil War. And that's what led to the 15th Amendment. Right, the 14th, 15th Amendment, and such, and they weren't followed. They weren't abided by. I guess
the
1965,
13th, 14th, 15th Amendment were passed, and then there was civil rights legislation in the 1870s by the Grant administration to ensure the enforcement of that while the Army of Reconstruction was removed. The Army, which occupied the South,
Johnson pulled them out. Right,
that's right. They occupied the South. They were brought back.
For nearly 100 years, they had laws in place to mitigate these issues, and nobody executed any of them laws.
Here's the thing. People go on and on about the treatment of African Americans in this country, and that's fine. That's a fair point. But they seem to forget that Black men got the vote nearly 100 years before white women did. It wasn't until 1920 when women got the vote in this country, but Black men were given the vote in 1866. Anyway, it's just the point is that the distortions of history are very disturbing here. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody about members of the House of Representatives, 414 of whom voted in favor of this fake Juneteenth holiday, celebrating the end of slavery, which is false. Slavery didn't end when a Union general rocked up in Texas and goes, in the area that's under my control, I'm enforcing the Emancipation Proclamation. All these slaves are free. Yeah, but that's only a little tiny corner of Texas. The rest of them were in bondage for months after that. And slavery didn't end officially legally in this country until the passage and ratification by 3/4 of the states, not in insurrection, otherwise it wouldn't have passed,
right,
on December 6th, 1865. That's the day you want to celebrate the end of slavery. And the fact that we allowed this bogus federal holiday to be created in June is a disgrace to the station and shows the cowardice of the Republicans in Congress and every Democrat who voted for it. You're 414 shameful people because you should have said no. You want to celebrate it? December 6th, not a Texas holiday, a U.S. holiday. And I'm so sick of it. The moral courage that's lacking in Washington, D.C. You're afraid of being called a racist? Call me a racist. You don't even know what I'm talking about. The people call me a racist. Who's Ida B. Wells? Ida B. Wells. I don't know. Who's Ida B. Wells? Madam C.J. John. Who's that? I don't know who that is. C.J. Walker. They don't know the history of the people that make these stupid claims.
No, they don't. And the thing is, for far too long, and it still goes on, Republicans, is once they start getting called racist, xenophobe, homophobe, they slink away. It's like they don't come to the defense of their friends or their allies, if you will, the fellow party members. They not all, mind you. I'm just saying, but a lot of them just slink away. So that tactic by the Democrats was so effective for so long that they're still using it. You know, you can't win on a policy idea. You can't win on you know, your political philosophy or anything like that. You can't win on the merits. So you have to resort to these nonsense, the name calling, the lies, the slander, in order to get some sort of resolution, something passed, some sort of legislation pushed through, because you know, people don't want to be called a name. It's like the bully attacking you in the schoolyard. Well, I don't want them to attack me next, so I'm just going to run away from my friend. Come on now.
The party that claims anti-bullying is the one that's doing all the bullying in politics. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like AOC trying to bully Biden after the speech, saying he didn't go far enough. Now she's pushing to have 10 to 13 million illegals granted citizenship, and that's what she's talking about. Anyway, just nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time here. So probably about 10 minutes left in the show. Any other thoughts you guys may have about what went on in CPAC, Ukraine, or the State of the Union, or anything like that, or what's on the horizon with regards to maybe your shows, Colonel? Things that people could look forward to. And also at the same time, you talk about your show. Where can they find your show at?
Oh, that's fair enough. For the moment, until censorship rears its ugly head, I'm back on YouTube. It's look up Chris Wyatt Africa or Chris Wyatt. And be careful because you'll get the Hollywood producer. His name is Chris Wyatt too. But you can find me on YouTube, also on the other platforms. But most people follow me on YouTube, Chris Wyatt, and it's a program that's, of course, it's called Chris Wyatt Africa because my original channel was Chris Wyatt. Anyway, and I focus on Africa, but it's not my only focus. If other events come up, geopolitical things, I discuss those. Today, I started a daily broadcast with an update on Ukraine. And I also bring in video clips that people are sharing on social media and debunk things and show, well, this is from 8 years ago. This isn't current. This is what this probably is. People are claiming this. And then I also give them updates about all the actions taking place by private actors, state actors, and such, and information that's publicly available, and analyze it and give people feedback. They can agree with it and disagree with it. But the point is that I am an independent journalist and a former intelligence officer and analyst who is giving them a perspective that it is not. I have no dog in the fight. I don't work for the administration. I'm not towing the line. I don't work for a media company. I don't work for the tech companies. And I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it to share and get people thinking about things. I'm appalled at the dearth of critical thinking and the sheeple-like approach of people around the world simply accepting what the government says. I'm not anti-government, and neither were the Canadian truckers. I just want people to tell the truth and be honest about their bias, which I am. I'm biased. We're all biased. And I'll tell you what my bias is. But that doesn't mean I can't be objective in analyzing things. I criticize people that I like when they fall short of what they claim they're going to do. So they can find me there. I'm also on lots of other platforms. And then, if you go to one of my videos, you'll find a link to Linktree, which is an Australian website. And in there, you'll find all my social media links. It's kind of an aggregator. It'll take you to Patreon, the Subscribe Star, Gitter, Parler, Gab, Twitter, Facebook, all those things are on there. Plus where I'm published abroad, my LinkedIn profile, everything. Anyway, so that's where you can find me. It's a labor of love, and I enjoy it at times. Other times I get very frustrated. Like right now, I looked over and glanced at what's going on here on our broadcast on Facebook, and a community standards thing came up over here. I guess introduced me to community standards. I mean, what did somebody say in the chat that offended their community standards? I don't know, but that sort of stuff. I also rail against censorship, and I identify censorship and outright bold-faced lies by tech companies, academia. And one of the things I do is I do a daily news program called the Indaba Africa News of the Day. It's every day, 7 days a week, and I pin it to time in Africa, South Africa, Botswana time. So it's 6 p.m. there normally, although I may adjust it sometimes soon on certain days, but 6 p.m., which means 11 o'clock right now in the U.S. every day in the morning. And when we have daylight savings time, that'll be at noon every day. Easy to remember. I go over news starting in Southern Africa, work my way across the continent, news that I think is important. I cherry pick the stories, the ones I think would be interesting to my audience. It's not like it's every story. And then I bring in the actors that influence Africa, whether it's European Union, the U.S., China. And then I also focus on big ticket issues like censorship and the spicy cough, the coof, the Rona, all that stuff. And then I go beyond that and I'll deal with geopolitical topics like Myanmar and why Joe Biden wants to start a war with Ukraine over Ukraine, but he hasn't said anything about Myanmar, where a military junta overthrew the government the 1st of February last year. And I've been railing about that since that time, over a year ago. And the list goes on. This is a democratically elected government, by the way. And I talk about the criminal behavior of Canberra, the capital of Australia, in criminalizing behavior of Australians, and even worse, Western Australia, where they won't even let other Australians enter their state over their terror of the widest open spaces on the planet, and they're terrified of corona with nobody living there. Anyway, so I cover a lot. I have musicians, artists, politicians, farmers, anybody can think of. Now actors also as well on my program. I've had previous actors. So it's just a big tent. I let everybody in, and we look to have a good time. I have pretty good audiences. As I mentioned earlier today, I did that first program. We had 2,500 people show up for it just to hear what I had to say in Ukraine. I think people are hungry not to hear from a talking head who puts makeup on and goes in front of the camera. Now, if I'm offered that opportunity, I'll be a talking head, but I'd like to say I'm better informed and more honest than many of those people.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I just talked about it, Fox News and all the people that go on there, you do occasionally get the experts that go on there, like, General Jack Keane, for example. But, your program and the stuff that you bring to bear, and others like you bring an expertise that you're not seeing on the major networks. So you bring a different perspective to it, I think. And plus you don't have an agenda, beholden to a paycheck. So I appreciate that. I appreciate people who do stuff like that. And something you said a minute ago kind of reminded me of a quote from Henry David Thoreau. And it says, "I ask for not at once no government, but at once a better government." So yeah, something you just said just brought that up. So
there you go. That's back when men are men and sheep didn't hear anything in the conversation. That's when men were serious about what they did. Mark Twain, Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson. These are great Americans, the things they wrote. It's interesting. By the way, the CPAC thing turned into some other things. I went to Daytona Beach where I was interviewed by Alex Newman, who is an author, a writer on The New American. And that's where the interview will be. And he also is a writer for the Epic Times. And then finally, among other things, he has a media company. He also works for Lindell TV. I'll be interviewed Friday on Lindell TV at 5 or 4:30 in the afternoon. I don't know if it's live or being recorded and edited, but I'll be on Lindell TV, Mike Lindell's program.
Absolutely. Hopefully you'll send us the links, and that way we could share it out on social media and Common Sense Conservatives and our own social media pages as well.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that as soon as they hook me up with them. But
yeah, right. Absolutely.
It's ironic because I expressed a little dissatisfaction with Lindell TV. And he's like, well, I was going to invite you to come on Lindell TV, but it sounds like you don't like them. I said, no, I'm happy to come on. I'm still waiting for my access for my functions and not just Mike and his friends.
Yeah, right. Yeah, John, how you looking? What are you thinking, my friend?
Oh, I was just sitting there thinking about, talking about CPAC. We had the pleasure of meeting someone by the name of, what was his name? Sanford Cameron. He and his colleagues were developing an app called Thought World.
Yeah.
And these kind of like some of the interesting things you get to find out about going to CPAC, things that you never heard of before. But Thought World's a social media app they developed. And the concept is that you don't get the bickering you do on Facebook and stuff, but you get to throw thoughts out there. So if you create a profile, you can create a thought, you can do it anonymously, or you can do it in a way that people can engage with you on your profile if you want to. And he was looking at it from a political perspective by developing this app where people who are campaigning and stuff can put thoughts out there and people can engage in it. We know thumbs up or thumbs down it and on a scale. Right. And so the concept of this app is really intriguing to me. I haven't got to get into it yet. I haven't had the time to really dig into it to get to know the app, but the way it's laid out, it's almost like an island, like a video game. You move around in it and stuff. And so I kind of like the concept of the app. In fact, Chris and I interviewed him. I think it was the first one that we did together. And
no, I think that was the first one was David Berg, I think, or what? No, you're right. He was the first one. Yeah,
he was. And so I thought that was intriguing. It was something new to learn. And if folks, if you want to check it out, it's thoughtworld.com, I believe. And you can find the app on Google Play or Apple if you're on Apple products. So, and then of course we had Stephen Rowe, you hooked us up with.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That was I was waiting for you to get to him from the Leadership Institute. He was one of the rock stars, one of the best things, and I'm looking to do some collaboration with him. Really, he wanted to collaborate with me, so we're going to see where that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a smart guy. Whenever he was actually on the stage, I was watching him, and I was like, let me message him. I sent him a message. I'm like, hey, go see this guy. He's like, all right, cool. And he came over and saw you guys.
He was energetic too. Young guy, highly energetic, very interesting, intriguing to speak with. And I liked his what he does, what he was talking about doing with digital media and stuff and educating people. They got a lot of free programs and stuff. So it's kind of it was kind of nice to meet him and talk to him about what it is he does and the fact that he's trying to create an independent thought for conservatives to get out there, how to use social media positively to work in your favor.
Yeah, and another thing that's good about CPAC is you see all the people that are the grassroots types that are out there making a lot of things happen, and you also see the big name people out there that are trying to expand their brand, trying to make a lot of money. But you see the people that are just doing it because of labor of love that show up there, and just trying to get ideas and policies pushed through, and of course to try to get government kind of reined in, if you will. So you see a lot of good people that show up there, not just the big names that you're going to see on TV as well. So that's the good thing about CPAC in person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's one person I forgot to mention here that I did manage to meet, and this guy's a rock star in his field too, particularly if you want to talk about China, and that's Gordon Chang.
Yeah, Gordon Chang.
I met Gordon Chang up, and he spoke at CPAC. I met him up on the stage when he ran out of business cards, so he had me take a snap of his business card.
Wow,
and I will be interviewing Gordon Chang on my channel as well. Looking forward to that. Maybe we can get him on here. Yeah, well, it was well worth the time, effort. But listen, I got to say this. John probably noticed it. Man, I was knackered. I was tired. It was, and it wasn't just because of CPAC. I mean, Putin had the audacity to invade the Ukraine while this is going on. So I'm also reporting on, researching, and doing live streams about the Ukraine the whole time that I'm also doing CPAC. So my day was, basically after that rough morning when I got into my room at 1:30, and then I broadcast for 2.5 hours, got 3 hours sleep, went over, did the conference the whole first day. And, I learned something here too. If you're going to be media, Dockers and a sports jacket are probably a smarter move, along with comfortable shoes rather than a business suit, because running around in a business suit for 14 hours a day will kill your feet. Can't imagine women wearing high heels all the time. I saw Ed Henry wearing very comfortable tennis shoes the first day, and he was joking about it. And then he wore these other shoes each day, and every day I saw shoes, and I pointed out, I said, "Well, see, I learned today. I wore my tennis shoes the last day."
Yeah, and he's got a new thing since he left Fox too. His new show. So
yeah.
But I've dealt with the media. I mean, for a number of years, and watched them and observed them. And a lot of times you'll see like they'll have tennis shoes on, but they'll have a nice suit on.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of interesting. Or the women where they're going to get the full from the feet up, they'll just change really quick into the high heels or whatever. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do have to say this. One of the most ironic moments was this. And of course, now when Trump would do his rallies over the past several years, and he'd go, back there, the fake media, those people. And he's always pointing at the cameramen. I was always empathetic and going, look, they're not the ones doing it to you. They're just the guys running the cameras. It's not them. That's just they're in the room. So here I am, 36 and a half years in uniform, supporting defending Constitution, 23 years stationed overseas in 16 different foreign tours. And I've got Carrie Lake and then Donald Trump pointing up at me going, those guys, the fake media.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw that he did that.
You're on the rise, or you got fake news.
And I got people turning around and booing and pointing at me like I'm some sort of felon or something.
I'm a good guy.
I mean, they're acting like, I don't know, like I was Canadian or something.
Watch out. Hockey.
Yeah, right.
Oh man,
it was ironic. It was very funny, but I'm just, and there are some people who are around me who knew I'm a veteran. veteran, and I just got out of the Army. And then I just look at his smile like, what are you going to do, man? Oh, I did meet a gentleman, John, very quickly. Sorry, we're running out of time here. Is it Carl Hansen or something like that? He's a shock jock in New England, in New Hampshire. Maybe it's Keith Hansen or something.
There.
No, you weren't. This was the last day. He was up there on his thing, and he said he was walking off, and he asked me what I did because we were chatting kind of between speeches, and I said no, I'm on the internet, but I'm also on radio. I'm on WSMN. He goes, oh, WSMN, everybody's on the WSMN. I'm on WSMN.
Oh, nice.
He looked at me. He's like, you don't know who I am? I'm like, I'm sorry. How do you not know who I am? I said, well, I don't live in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And he gave me his name. And he's like, apparently he's some sort of shock jock up there, and he didn't have a card, and we rushed out. I gave him my card. Hopefully he reaches out, because it would be nice to find out about it.
I'll look it up and see. The name doesn't ring a bell, but I'll look it up and see.
I thought it was Hansen. I can't.
Well, you're at the station, so you get a rundown. You get a rundown of who all's up there. So
I can ask the guys at the top. That's for sure.
Yeah, you better.
But I thought maybe we'd mention what was her name? Marcy McCarthy, real quick. She's GOP. Was it GOP chairwoman of DeKalb County, Georgia?
Yeah, Georgia.
And, I had asked her about volunteering. Would it be helpful to volunteer to keep elections more fair and honest and stuff like that? She says, no, don't volunteer. Sign up to be a poll worker. And I wanted to share this with the listening audience out here, because she emphasized the importance of becoming a poll worker, because when you're a volunteer, you got to go report something you see to somebody, and they're very, very busy and nothing becomes of it. But if you're a poll worker, you stand in more position of authority or where you can actually file things or say things and get things done and accomplished.
Yeah, you can usually go to the judge of elections or a commissioner of elections, depending on where you live and what they call it, and report it right away. And they have to kind of basically take notice of right on the spot, versus as a volunteer, they can kind of blow you off and say, hey, we'll look at it in a second, and nothing happens, like you said.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of an important aspect. And she says, you get a little pay out of it. It probably isn't much, but if you're going to do it, at least you get a little something out of it. Buys your beer at the end of the week or something. I don't know what you get paid, but be a poll worker then. If that's what's going to keep an honest and fair election, if you're willing to volunteer, go be a poll worker, folks. Get involved, because we got to win this next one. I'm expecting a red wave. I think you guys are too, but you're not going to have a red wave by complacency.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It'll be a trickle if people don't get off their bums.
I agree with you 100%. And vote in your local elections as well. Wednesday, 7 to 9 p.m. Common Sense Conservative on WSMN 1590 and 95.3. God bless.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at WSMN.